Let's get moving. All right, like I was saying before, my name is Gabriella. I'm a programs manager here at the Highline. And one of the key folks who will be managing Call for Ideas, and I'm super excited to be here with all of you to give you more information on what this program is going to look like and kind of more of the logistics. But before we jump in, some housekeeping. You have the option, like I've been saying, to have closed captions. That's going to be near your chat box on the bottom of the screen. If you want to, just click it so you can enable any language in which will pop up and you can read along while the Zoom, progresses. Again, it will be recorded and it'll be archived on YouTube, and so you'll have that ability. It says please mute, but I meant please mute. So I'll have that ability also on my end to do so as folks come in, but please do so. And if you have any questions, please utilize the chat box, and we'll make sure we answer those at the end. Sweet. I have two of my colleagues here with me, Asima Jansveld and Itai, and I will let them introduce themselves as we jump in. Yeah, Asima.
Thanks, Gabby. Hi, everyone. My name is Asima Jansveld. I'm the Chief Program and Engagement Officer here at the Highline. Really thrilled to have so many of you interested in our Call for Ideas. So thanks for joining us today. So just to give you an overview of what we'll be covering today on this call, we'll give you a brief overview of the Highline, who we are, what we do, our audience when we think about programs in particular, what we currently do on the Highline, and why we are executing and implementing this Call for Ideas at this point, and then dive into some more specific information about the Call for Ideas process, limitations, goals itself. And we'll leave a little time at the end for Q&A if any of you have any questions. So we do ask if you have questions. If they come up during the rest of this agenda, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll make sure that we address it at the end when we get to that time. So who is the Highline? What are we? We always like to talk about ourselves not just as a public park, but as a nonprofit organization. And so a lot of the work that Gabby and I do, in particular in our programs area, is to engage our communities on and off the Highline. And we're really devoted to what we can do to create connected, healthy neighborhoods and cities overall. So we are grounded in an experience that is about art and nature and design. And when we talk about our mission and values, we are talking about the areas of possibility, place, people, and experience. And so we're looking at this convergence of nature, art, people, and design in ways that we can enact bold ideas, continue to be on the forefront of innovation and how you use and create public spaces that are welcoming and for inclusion, and where we can create extraordinary experiences moving forward. So many of you, as you all know, the Highline is a very popular tourist destination. We're welcoming people from all over the world all the time. But when we talk about programs, about the intentional activities that we create on the park beyond the experience of walking the space, we have priority populations that are our target for those programs in particular. So we are always thinking first about our local residents, students, businesses, and workers. And when we talk about local, we're talking about Manhattan's West Side overall. So in particular, we're looking at our neighbors in NYCHA and affordable housing, both in our local neighborhood, but across New York City. We like to target the youth and older adults in our programs wherever possible so that they feel welcome and included on the Highline and the Highline experience. And we like to support small businesses and small organizations and community-based organizations wherever possible through the work that we do. So just to tell you a little bit about what we do today, our intention with this Call for Ideas is really to broaden our audience, to expand it, and to build partnerships beyond what we do today already. So I want to spend a little bit of time letting you know what that is, so that your ideas that you're submitting are not repeating what we already have been successful in putting forward, and which we intend to continue to do into the future. So we do hold in the summer family workshops. This year we'll be holding 8 of them, creative outlets for community to come together and work on art projects that capitalize on the horticulture theme of the year or the art themes that we have developed. We have a series of wellness classes. They're multi-generational, and we offer them, I think we have 10 that we'll be offering next year throughout the season. We have some community programs already where we do partner with local organizations like Hudson Guild and other and Generations Project to bring their programming onto the Highline. We have an extremely successful teen night where some of the teens that we work with, that we hire on a yearly basis, put together, and that's what you see in the picture here, a really fun evening for local youth to come together and go through a series of activities and dance and enjoy themselves. Our two hallmark activities, the most by far attended events of our Ariba nights, which last year were held in July and August. And we draw over, I think it's about 600 people per night to each of them for a really fun night of salsa dancing on the park. And of course, last but not least, we have a series of performing art performances throughout the year that is curated by our art department. So this is just giving you a little bit of a flavor of the different kind of spaces that we activate and what these look like in real life. So some of these are past things. So just to kind of show you what the potential of other events that we used to do in the past as part of this, that we could be thinking about bringing back as well. We've had lots of successful dinner and social and eating events. These are some of the workshops that we put on, that we continue to put on. We have seated conversations to cater to our older audience that might not be able to work the entire park. Also have wellness classes that are seated as well. In the past, we've had robust Halloween celebrations. This is one particular focus for us, like what can we start doing for Halloween again? Really, many of you, hopefully some of you experienced the Mile Long Opera, which was taking advantage of the linear experience of the High Line, and that's something we're also interested in. How can we take advantage of a processional experience? And just this last year, we had this poetry reading by Old Tree, which is a fantastic sculpture up at our northern end right now. But what now? So we're really interested in seeing what kind of ideas we can use to continue to activate the park. And so just quickly before I hand it back over to Gabby, we're really excited to help strengthen partnerships in our community and throughout the city through this work. Recognize we don't need to do this all on our own. And so we look forward to hearing some of your ideas. Gabby?
Thank you so much, Asima. So call for ideas. This is exciting stuff. Just to give everybody an overview of what it is, we're looking to partner specifically with nonprofit organizations and educational institutions whose goal is just to submit ideas at this point, right? Or any of your inspirations, so that you can use the Highline as a platform to activate your programs. This is also key in when we were thinking about how to do this. Our whole goal also was like, along with giving space and working collaboratively, right, was also to bring awareness to what your organizations do and who you serve. And so for us, this is, again, about free programming on the park, a shared resource for cross-city collaboration and also cross-neighborhood, right? We are on the West Side, which has such a rich history. And we want to do more community-generated events starting in October specifically. So anything that's submitted now, which we'll go over later in the presentation, our goal is to then activate in fall of 24. So welcome to Call for Ideas. So how do you know if you're a good fit? So we're going to just start off with some of our non-negotiables. We created this list in a way that's a bit more intuitive for folks to go through. So these are a lot of yes or no's, right? Are you a nonprofit or educational institution? These are the folks that we want to partner with at this moment, because there's already a set group of people that folks serve. And there's also already like a brand and people that you can work alongside, right? So your audience plus our audience can actually create something a bit more robust. Can the idea be held outside? So we have to intentionally think about this all the time, being a park. Certain sections of the park also do get very windy, which we'll go over again later as you go and look at the spaces. But this is just something to keep in mind, right? Can you be outside for, let's say, 30 minutes to an hour to 2 hours? And next, right, just do you adhere to the safety regulations on the park? This is listed on the Highline website, so please go through it and look. We can't have, for example, fire, right? You can't have anything actually lit. And so we highly recommend folks go through that, see if it aligns again with your program, because that's a huge part of the consideration. Next is the idea of free and open to the public. We do a lot of work that is, or programs that are free already, and we want to make sure that we can continuously provide that for our audiences and our visitors. As we are learning more and more, especially after COVID, was that folks want to have spaces in which they can feel seen and feel safe in. And so we're learning that having to pay for things, right, is sometimes a big barrier for a lot of our priority populations and the audiences that Asima went through last time. And so just keeping that in mind. And next is just, does the idea take advantage of the linear experience? If you've walked the park before, you know that there are certain sections that are very narrow. And so we'd just like to keep that in mind. Can it host, again, 15 to 20 people, or is it something that's a bit more intimate? And so, yes, just keeping in mind that we are a narrow park that's elevated, and we need to know at least how many people we're anticipating to host. Next. So these are a bit more open. When I say open, I mean, open to interpretation, because I do think there's a bunch of different ways that we can have intersections on what is it to actually be a public space and creating connected, healthy neighborhoods and cities. And so our first one, which we went through earlier, right, was like, does it align with the Highline's mission of people, place, experience? And with this one, again, we're really open to hearing how people make that connection with their own program. Next is the idea unique and innovative. So for us, we are really looking to ideas that haven't been done before. And if it has been done before, that's fine. But I think with this space and this platform, we have an opportunity to create something new. Next is, does your idea demonstrate engagement with diverse audiences and promote inclusivity? Again, with our priority populations, we want to make sure that whatever the program idea is, that it's accessible to folks, right? Can they come and feel included? And if not, then we need to have a deeper conversation, right? Especially if the idea is something you want to see happen. And also, going on to our next one, does your organization serve BIPOC, LGBTQ, or historically underserved communities? Again, we want to highlight using the platform and the spaces to really bring awareness to folks who may need it and or have been historically left out of programs and in spaces, right? Because not all the time, I think all of us feel included in a lot of the different spaces around the city. And so we want to make sure that is highlighted and centered as we figure out what's going to happen on the park. And next, does your idea demonstrate the potential, again, to increase awareness around relevant issues or themes impacting our society and world? We think a lot of educational institutions and nonprofits serve as hubs to have conversations and also just to bring light to things that are happening around the city, right? These larger themes that we all see around, again, climate change. And that one just comes up to mind because I feel like that's the one we're constantly having to talk about, especially on the Highline. But things around resource fairs, right? There's a conversation on bringing awareness, especially in 2024. And so with that being said, I just want to pause because something that we wanted to highlight with folks is that when it comes to bringing awareness about certain issues, we just want to be clear that programs cannot be political. And what we mean by that is that you can't come onto the park and campaign, especially in 2024 when it's electoral year. You can't come into the park and campaign and or lobby, right? If you're bringing political awareness, i.e. this is how city government runs or something around participatory budgeting, then that is accepted. But we just want to be clear that we're not going to have somebody come onto the park and program around a particular candidate. That's not our role. So we just wanted to say that for folks. So let's go back. Okay, submission process. We hope that this is super easy for folks. It's a Google sheet or a Google form, I mean, and it's on our website. Just have to put in your first name, your last name, and certain details around your idea. And so again, it doesn't have to be completely fleshed out, but at least the main parts and structure and skeleton have to be there. We just want to also make sure that it's accessible. Again, that's a big part for us. And that we have this open until Monday, January 22nd. And we want to be clear also that any of the ideas that you submit are not going to be used without our, or if you aren't chosen, if an organization or an idea isn't chosen, we will not be using that idea. We want to just be transparent about that. And we also want to caveat that if the idea is similar to what we already do, there may be nuance. And so please reach out if you have any questions around the submission process. But again, it's just a Google form, has a couple questions. And then we're going to be reviewing that and sending out acceptances or idea continuations in March. Okay. So what happens after I submit my idea? So like I was saying before, they'll be assessed by an internal review committee. And afterwards, we'll be notifying people who submit their ideas by March 24. And then those ideas will be working one-on-one with both me and Itai, who's on this call, and the production team. And we'll be working to get those ideas activated in fall of 24. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. It's very like do. So what we provide.
Sorry, thanks, Gabby.
go ahead,
Yeah, so this is my slide to take over. Pleasure to be virtually meeting you all, and I hope to work with you in the future. My name is Itai. I am the event production manager at the Highline. I help to manage the team that would be supporting you guys in these events that we might be collaborating with you all on. So this slide talks a little bit about what we as Friends of the Highline can provide through this collaboration. So that includes website, social media posts, and on-park signage as communications assets and outreach. So we have weighted signage throughout the park that we could work together to design a cool promotional material for your event. We could put that on the park a few days before the event or even a week or so before. We have a large social media outreach as a famous organization in the city that we would be using to promote the event as well. And yeah, obviously our more formal website where we would inform the public what events are coming up. And that's something that myself and Gabby would work with you all on in terms of designing and posting and that timeline. Something that we would take care of are the requisite permits for the event. That includes a sound permit, which we get from our local police precinct, and a special events permit from NYC Parks. Those usually come at a small cost to organizations, and we would be covering those costs associated with those permits. We can provide a photographer for your event. For your own portfolios and to memorialize the amazing events that we'll hopefully be throwing together. Obviously, we'd be providing the spaces in the park that you could utilize for the event, to use as your platform to highlight, whatever the goal is of the event or the mission. And we'll go over what those spaces look like, what some of those spaces look like later on in this presentation. We have many different and unique spaces on the park that we can activate. And we can provide some production support. Actually, there's a member of our production team who's also on this call. Michelle is familiar with it, but we can provide a certain amount of speakers, microphones. We have a crew of production assistants. who can help you with loading in and out of the park. We have a certain amount of electric capacity in the different spaces on the park. We have over 200 chairs, about 15 6-foot to 4-foot tables, and a large number of stanchions that we can also help to provide to you for your event. If you have further questions, obviously, as we go through, and talking about how to achieve your event, we can talk about the specific production inventory that we have on the park and whether that can be available to you or not. It's a good segue to the next slide, which is what we cannot provide. So, support on designing your event, whether that's actual materials that you're using on the park, or like designing the production side of things is not something we'd be able to help you with. Other staffing, such as videographers, lighting designers, sound design, things like that, isn't something that we can provide. Your organization would be responsible for removing any trash, and not only trash, but also event elements that you might be utilizing on the park. You would be responsible for taking off. And of course, we can talk about all this stuff in more detail as you have questions at the end of the slide. We cannot provide the staff for these type of events that would be needed for an overnight load-in. So outside of park hours, we would have to achieve our load-ins within the park hours, which is from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. during the winter and 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. during the summer, just so you know. We cannot cover the cost of any third-party security that we or you might think is necessary for an event. We can point you in the right direction for a vendor that we'd like to use, but we cannot cover that cost. Any extra power you need as far as generators, we cannot provide that. We can't provide Wi-Fi on the park, or things such as like fans, things of that nature. We also will not be covering any stipends used for artists or otherwise staff that you would be using for your event. As I mentioned, not only trash, but artwork removal or any other event elements that you'd be utilizing after the display period. Bringing that stuff to the Highline, whether you're utilizing a box truck or otherwise, to help bring all the stuff to the Highline, that is also something that you would be expected to be responsible for, as well as installing said elements on the park outside of any production equipment from the Highline that we'd be responsible for helping to install. And yeah, any equipment that you might need to sorry, thanks, Gabby, to film your event outside of the photographer, which we could provide. So yeah, you need to bring your own equipment for that. Thanks, Gabby. We can move right along.
Got it.
Yeah, so there are many other considerations that we have in terms of throwing these events on the park, and I'll let Asima take over and explain those in more detail.
Thanks, Itai. So just to follow up first quickly on what Itai was just going through, it could sound like a that we're not providing, but I want to make clear that this is a conversation. The reason we're calling this a call for ideas is because we want to be inspired and work with you about engaging new audiences and having new audiences feel welcome on the Highline. If you bring to us a really stellar idea and you tell us this requires funding, or if we had partnership with the Highline, we'd be able to access this funding, or that we'd be able to get to this grant, tell us that. And there is opportunity for us to think about longer term planning about how we could do something in 25 or 26 if we think the idea is really exciting and we're actually going in together on and procuring funding to make it happen. It might also give you an appreciation of how hard it is to put events on that are 30 feet up in the sky. There are a lot of constraints up here. And so, we're looking to partner and help us do more on the Highline as we do that. So the other considerations we'll be thinking about as we go through your proposals and ideas is just what do we have on the docket for construction or capital improvements along the High Line that may impede accessibility. That's also going to feed into which are the spaces that ETI actually runs you through as available for the following year in particular, because we do have a few upcoming construction projects. We have a very world-renowned High Line art program. It is
Is that just
did you,
me?
did you just lose me for a second?
Yeah.
You,
Repeat
okay.
that, Asima, on the Highline Art, please.
Yes, sorry. So we have a really world-renowned public art program on the High Line, and we take a lot of pride in it. So if anyone comes forth with ideas that are about public art, we have to really seriously consider how it intersects with the public art program that we currently put on the High Line. And we have to make sure we're not in conflict with any of the activities that we're doing through that part of our work as well. We do use venue rentals as a source of income for the High Line. So fairly often we do get corporations that are willing to rent parts of the High Line for small, quick, temporary activations, and they're an important source of revenue. So we just have to look at conflicts with that in terms of space needs and while we're thinking about free programming that we put on the park. We do have a robust food and beverage program throughout the park, but mostly centered on the Chelsea Market Passageway. So again, ETI will be offering space and talking a little bit more about the conflicts with that, but there are kiosks there that we want to make sure are continue to be able to operate without, despite, you know, any new programming that we do during the high season. Of course, what I mentioned about our existing programming is something we'll be considering. And of course, insurance requirements, as Gabby and ETI have touched on as well. All right, let's hear about the spaces.
Thanks, Gabby. Thanks, Asima. Yeah, so we have some slides here just to give you a picture and a quick look in at what some of the spaces are that you can activate through this initiative. There are further details I can provide to you about these spaces in terms of electric capacity and capacity in general for your event that we can talk about in more detail as we get closer through the process. But so that, yeah, so we're going north in the park now. Gabby, if you don't mind just going back to Tiffany Overlook, and I'll start from there. Sorry about that. So yeah, this is there you go. Either one's good. So the first slide we saw is Gansevoort Plaza, which is our only space that's on street level that is available to activate. We host a lot of different marketing activations usually throughout the year, but is a unique space that you know, is different than obviously being upstairs on the park. One of the things I want to highlight about this venue is that things like a food truck are totally possible here. Larger items, which aren't that difficult to get up onto the park, are achievable in this space. Yeah, so moving right along, this is a unique space at the southern end of the park. It is a small space where you can host things like reception or, you know, obviously you guys are the creatives and can come up with great ways to utilize these spaces. But I like this spot. It's the right at the end of the park. Yeah, and moving further north, this is our first covered space. It's important to note that some of these spaces are either covered, partially covered, or totally out in the open. This is the 14th Street Passage. There is a large electric capacity here. We have a projector, which could possibly be utilized for your event as well. We host things in this space, such as dance performances and artist talks, you know, quite often, and is one of the favorite spots. We also have unique lighting in this space that can either be white or blue, depending on sort of what you like, and obviously is more weatherproof than other spots on the park. Yeah, just a little bit further north on the park. So here we're at around 16th Street, between 15th and 16th, really. This is our second covered space, Chelsea Market Passage. As Asima mentioned, along the east side of this passageway, we usually have food vendor kiosks. That program runs from April until the end of October. And so that takes up about half of the passage on the east side there. You are totally welcome to still activate this space, and we love to hear ideas about utilizing those food vendors within your idea as well. Thanks. Yeah, and Gabby's next slide right here is the porch, which is actually just on the lower level of Chelsea Market Passage. It's sort of overlooking 10th Avenue, and the container that you see there is another food vendor that we host called Hearth. And they are also open throughout the food vending season from April until October. So yeah, a lot of these ideas, as Gabby mentioned, are actually going to be activated in the fall. So could or could not, incorporate or clash with the food vendors. So from Chelsea Market Passage, walking all the way up until 30th Street, that's where we find ourselves here at Coach Passage. A lot of that space between Chelsea Market Passage and Coach Passage is quite small, so is really more of a walking passageway for our patrons. Like Gabby mentioned, it is a linear experience on the park. So we have had some interesting events that activate small parts of the park leading up to Coach Passage, which we could always explore alongside you guys. But this is another large venue space that we can activate. It is partially covered. As you can see, we have a roof. But in bad weather, I do want to highlight that it's quite windy, and we should always be thinking about that when we think about ideas on the park. So many of the spaces can get quite windy, and obviously we can talk about that more in detail, but something I'd like you to all to keep in mind. But yeah, and that brings us to our last space at the northern end of the park. This space is called the Spur. Right now, the art piece that's actually installed there is called Old Tree. What you're seeing here in this slide is an art piece called Brick House, which was removed a couple of years ago now. We've hosted a lot of fun events up here in this past year, a poetry event. We have the seating steps, which can be, sort of a perfect place for an audience to sit, or even to be utilized as a stage and seats, in the open space that you see here. I know a lot of you must have already been to the park or hope to come visit. I definitely recommend checking out this space. The art piece that's there right now is a big neon tree. And so definitely gives a different dimension to the space, and something that we should all think about as well when we think about how to activate the park, is the existing art that's already there and how that can contribute to your event aesthetically or otherwise. So yeah, those are some of the spaces on the park that we can hope to host you at.
Amazing. Thank you, Itai. So we're going to open it up now to any questions. If folks want to unmute themselves or put it in the chat, there's other options too if folks are still processing, to email us as well, which I will share in like 5 minutes, but wanted to open it up first.
I have a question. I was thinking in the Tiffany part of the High Line, wondering how wide it is, if our performance could fit there or not. Because
Sure, Cecilia, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, but that space at Tiffany Overlook is about 20 feet wide. And then it does have a canopy of trees as well, which can be either bare or, full of life, depending on the season. Yeah, and we do have floor plans for the spaces as well that I can provide to you, but please finish your thought. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, that's fine. It's just the performance would be sunlight dependent. So also having a canopy of trees might not be the best idea. So I'm thinking the Spur might be a better place to put it, also because it has the bleachers. Yeah.
For sure. I agree with you there, Cecilia, and would love to host you on the park to check out some of the spaces with your event in mind.
Thank you.
I'm getting some in the chat, so I will just read them out loud. I'll condense this presentation with the pictures and the images of the spaces so folks can have that at their disposal. I have everybody's email via registration, so we'll send that out. Next is, if the project is approved, can it be presented earlier than the fall? And unfortunately, specifically the month of June, July, and August are our busiest months on the park, from internal programming happening along with our external events. And so we'd like to keep it out of that time range just so folks can do what they have to do. Because we share the park space alongside other departments. Just gonna keep reading. So if you are in the process of becoming a nonprofit, please still submit your idea and we'll go from there. We're hoping by the time, again, and you can just let us know via our email what's going on, and just keeping us aware. And then also, again, by the time March hits, all of the folks will be able to know if their idea is moving on. So from March till fall, I mean, you have some time. And keep reading. Are there any duration limits? So that is start and end times or suggestions about audience attention span that we've observed. Yes, okay. So if you're going to be doing something like Ariba again is one of the largest dance festivals on the park that we have. We have a DJ, dance performers. It's pretty large in terms of production. In something like that, we have a time span about 3-4 hours. And usually folks stay from start to finish. This is one of the events that also incorporates a lot of our food and beverage programs. So it's a little bit more interdisciplinary. When I look at, let's say, an artist talk or a family program, those usually last no more than 2 hours. Folks, for our family programs usually also involve the public. So people are coming in and out. There's no registration for it versus the artist talk, which is usually about an hour. Performances also are usually about an hour or so in a space. And we notice that that's usually how long people want to stay, especially if it's in the fall, it's a bit colder or briskier. We'd like to keep all of that in mind. And so if you want to start something, again, depending on the date and the time, if it's something that we say, look, maybe the weekend works better, I would say about 2-hour time span versus the weekday, which is more of like an hour and a half. So I would keep it kind of like in that space. But really open, again, if you see your program lasting a bit longer, definitely open to the conversation. Do you know when the full presentation will be on YouTube? Hopefully today. We have our one that we did before back in December already up on YouTube. And so once this is done, I'll submit this to our comms team. And so no later than Friday will this be up. And could the programming begin a bit later than the fall? So begin a bit later than fall, like winter. If you want it in winter, again, we're open to it. Again, it is really cold in the winter on the park, especially because we're elevated and certain sections do become wind tunnels. So just want to keep that in mind. But recently we had a partner do an audio tour. So they worked with composers, created this app, and then distributed it to their stakeholders who then came on the park. And as they were walking through different sections, you heard different things. And so that happened literally December 21st. And it was freezing, but people had a great time. So yes, we are open to later than fall, but just keep in mind the weather.
I'll just to interject, I mean, we are excited about the idea of activating the Highline more around the holidays, so like with the app, the music experience that Gabby just referenced, we had hot chocolate and churros. So there are ways to make it feel cozy. And I will say it is magical in the evenings in the winter on the Highline as well.
and it's less crowded, which makes it
And
even
it's less
better.
crowded. Yeah.
Someone asked if the piece is movable, can it parade from south to north and north to south, vice versa? It really, again, depends on the day that we choose. And so we're willing to work with folks on what that means, because if something is movable, we would have to think about permitting, we would have to think about safety, and also staffing alongside that. I hope I'm correct in saying that, Itai. Any other suggestions for that one?
Yeah, I think I'd be open to hearing more about what that idea looks like. Obviously, the safety of our patrons is at the forefront of our mind when we think about anything that we can do on the park in terms of installations. But theoretically, that's totally possible and sounds like an amazing idea.
Someone asked, do we need to apply with one of the particular places or spaces in mind, or is there flexibility? So when you go through the submission or when you go through the Google form, none of the places are on there. So you don't have to worry about that. If the idea is chosen, then we would work alongside you to pick what the best space would be. Can you share more about successful family programs that you've had in the past? Sure thing. So this past summer, we've had 4, and we tried to play with what does a weekday look like versus what a weekend would look like. And we did things from building cities. So we worked alongside our teaching artists, and we used recycled materials, we used reusable materials, and we built a whole city that was literally the landscape of the High Line, which was really cool to see. We also did things from identifying plants to collages to origamis and people building their own books, which was really awesome. And so those were just like a little bit of what we do. Again, it's more drop-in style, the family programs, and more art and horticulture based. And so you'll see a lot of the elements that you see on the park during the summer in those programs. I hope that makes sense. And they were super successful, again, because people can just kind of come in and out and take things to go with their kids. Can we distribute materials promoting our org? Yes, you can distribute promotion materials. Like if you have an info table at your program, that's totally, that works. And can we accept donations? Unfortunately, because we are a park and we have to follow park rules, by their law, they said that we cannot accept any other donations via a partner. And so sadly, no, we cannot, or the particular organization, if you do a program on the park, you cannot accept donations, but you can feel free to have an email list and follow up afterwards. I think that's usually a successful method that we've seen through our partners. And that is all. Something that came up in our last meeting that we had was around storage. Is there storage space where we can put things? And unfortunately, there is not storage for us. So keeping in mind, how are you going to move things on and off the park as well? Sweet. So again, my name is Gabriella. Asima's on here. Itai's on here. If you have any questions, more questions, please feel free to email us. Someone just wrote, who would be a good email to follow up with? This is a Waterfront Seattle person on here. Asima, it's exciting. We have a program and a department specifically called the High Line Network, which works really closely with Waterfront Seattle. So we'd love to see you on here. Name is Jessica Lotz. Jessica, we will follow up with you personally. And so great to see you. And again, if anybody has anything particular for programs related to Call for Ideas, please email us here at callforideas@thehighline.org, and we check that every day. So we'll get to you promptly. And can you submit photos or diagrams to explain the idea better? There's not an option to do that because of Google settings. That's not, the way that we move. But again, if we choose the idea, please try to write it as best as possible, and we'll follow up with any questions that we have. If we're like, what does this look like? Or what are you imagining? So we'll make sure we're diligent on that. Sweet.
Can I just mention one thing that I think we have not said anything about, what we're thinking about themes for the High Line for 24. 24 is an anniversary year for the Highline. It is our 15th year of existence, 25th year of existence of our organization. So that is a running theme throughout the year. If you have anything that's, we want to be looking and celebrating our past, but also looking towards the future. So if you have anything that's in line with that, that's interesting to us, for us to consider. Also around horticulture, we'll be celebrating Pete Udolph, who's the original designer, and thinking about the future of horticulture and thinking a lot about sustainability and biodiversity and our role in that space moving forward. So anything that's in line with that would also be interesting for us to think about. So I just wanted to let you know in general what's shaping some of the content that we will be putting out ourselves.
Well, thank you, everyone. I hope this makes sense and it's inspiring and that we see some more submissions. Great.
Really excited to hear from you all.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Have a great day, everybody.